means even when we are unfruitful, even when things are messed up, even when things are not going according to the plan, how we would desire it to go, that God is still thinking about us. Does that bless anybody to know that no matter how bad the situation, no matter how dark the hour is, that we are not forgotten about by God, that He still thinks about, He still has a plan for our life, no matter how far we run away from it or how far we get off course, that God still loves us and He is still mindful of us. He is mindful. Verse 14, look at it today. The Lord shall increase you more and more and your children. Not only is He mindful of us, but He gave us a promise that even though we may be unfruitful right now, that fruitful seasons are coming. And there's something about a tree. Generally, it has fruitful seasons. And this is the reason I feel like most of us give up. Because it didn't say every day was your birthday. It didn't say every day is like Christmas, that you get fruit all the time, but in its season you will be productive. The true test is, can you weather the seasons through the process and not give up through the times that you don't see anything happening, but have to trust that your root is deep enough and it's grounded enough, and that through the process your praise and your love for God is simply watering the tree to keep it developing and growing, and to know and have faith that God did not forget about you, that when your season comes, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, because to everything there is a season, that when your season comes, your unfruitfulness will die. I believe that most people are just one season away from their breakthrough, and they give up prematurely because they get so discouraged because somebody taught them everything's like the microwave. Everything happens instantly. And then we have people that reaffirm, and I'm not saying God can't deliver you instantly, God can't heal you instantly. I'm not saying that at all. But I found out through my life, the things that really last generally are things that take a long time to develop, because if I don't get it up here, it doesn't matter if it happens in here. I don't know how many people I've seen walk on crutches and different things, and God healed them, but their mind never changed. And even though they walked out the church with a crutch, or they took the patch off the eye, or their ear was working, give them 5 days, because their mind never changed. They lost it. Why? Because until you can get it in here, you'll never have it in here and never see it out here. But if we could understand that God is mindful of us and He desires us to increase, it doesn't matter if it happens out here or not. If it's in here, it's just a matter of time before it does happen. Verse 16, let's look at that together. Verse 16. The heavens, even the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth hath He given to the children of men. Now this will mess with you. The heaven is God's, the earth is ours. What does that mean? God has dominion here, we have dominion here. What does that really mean? That means that we have the power in our own life, through the power of life and death in our tongue, through all the keys that God has given us to be prosperous, that it is our God-given right, because Jesus has done everything He possibly could do, because after this, we have the inheritance of the firstborn of God, that is Jesus. In other words, everything that God meant for Jesus on this earth is ours. It's now our responsibility to dig and dung our own life. And this is where people get mad at God, because we want God to do all the work for us. We've got to understand there's some things in our life we've got to work out ourselves. The Bible says work out your own salvation. What was it talking about? It wasn't saying you've got to work all the time, but it was saying, guess what? To cultivate, to grow, to be fruitful, there's some things you're going to have to work on. You're not going to get up and just blink your eyes or wiggle your nose like Samantha and have everything just fall in line and just be all the perfect person that you thought you could be and have everything. If you still are cussing and fussing and messing and busting and all this stuff, guess what? You're probably going to have to work on that. Start with some anger management in the house. Is this a popular message at all? It's like a holy hush in the crowd. Hope you're taking mental notes. If we could understand that this is our realm of authority. This is our realm of authority. It takes all the pressure off God, and guess what? It messes up the idea that we could come to church and sit here like this and let God move in our life. We have the ability to open ourselves up and allow God to move, but guess what? He's not moving until we open up. Why? Because that's His area. This is ours. This is ours. Somebody say, this is mine. This is where I operate. This is where I live. This is where I breathe. This is where I move. This is how I work. This is my realm. This is my realm of authority. This is where I have power in this realm. The earth is His, and the earth is ours. Psalms chapter 24, verse 1. I want to prove it to you just in case. Psalms 24:1. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Okay, it says the earth is who? The who? The Lord's, and. So it's the Lord's and what? My wife and I are having a baby. In January, when it gets here, it will be mine and, somebody help me, hers. So the earth is the Lord's, and whose is it? The fullness thereof. Did you get that? Let me show it to you again. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 18. Somebody say the fullness thereof. Can I tell you who the fullness thereof really is? Without you going to sleep on me tonight while I'm teaching you. Ephesians 1, chapter 18. The eyes of your understanding be enlightened. That's some King James to say, change the way you think. That your understanding, your doors of your perception, your mindset could be enlightened. What does enlightened mean? We could shine some light on the dark areas of your life. Darkness, what it simply means is ignorance in the Bible. Anytime that you're dark to something, anytime there's ignorance to something, it means that there is no revelation there. So the Bible's saying, in your mind, if we could turn on a spiritual flashlight and clean out the cobwebs and enlighten you, that you can understand how God understands. It says, the eyes of your understanding being enlightened, that ye may know what is the hope of his calling. First of all, it said the first key to getting your mind like God's, to repenting in your mind, is knowing what his hope of his calling is. It means knowing what God's plan is. That will give you peace and help you grow in itself if you know what God's plan is, and my personal favorite, and what the riches of the glory of his, somebody read that word, because if I say it, I'll go on for 2 more hours. Somebody say inheritance. Inheritance in the saints, verse 19, talking about changing our mindset, and what is the exceeding greatness of his power to usward who believe. Now watch this. Who is the power to? Usward who what? Where does belief happen at? How does it work? In your mind you say, well, God can do that. I believe. God can bring me out of that. I believe. So in other words, if we don't believe, God is powerless to perform, right? So he's trying to get us to understand God's power is contingent upon our belief, which is contingent upon our mindset. So if we come in here and we see God as a little bitty God, guess how big he's going to be? Now, if we come into place and believe that God is an all-aspiring, all-present, all-knowing, omniscient, omnipresent God, that he is all-powerful through the process, guess what he's going to be when he comes in the house? He is bound by the way we see him. And I find it so amazing because we want to put God in a little bitty box in our everyday life until we have a great big problem. Then we want to open up the box and say, God, come out and help me solve this great big problem. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If that's how you see him, that's how he works. You will only get out of God how you see him. He said, open up the eyes of your understanding to see his power. Let's look at verse 19. I'm trying to get this through. We understand his power is to those who believe according to the working of his mighty powers. In other words, his power is to us who believe according to his workings of what? Of mighty power. In other words, he said, I will do mighty things after you believe, not before. In other words, I'm not going to come in and put your life back together and take what all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put back together again. I'm not even going to mess with that until you believe. Because if I did it, then of course you could believe, but you've got to have some faith, because without faith it's impossible to please God. Am I right? He said, if you could believe, it makes me so happy that I can't wait to jump up in your circumstance and make it better. Because I get excited about people who can see more in the inside than what's on the outside. I get excited when people see dead trees and believe that there's new life still in there somewhere. I get excited when people see what looks like a dead-end job, but somebody found some opportunity and knew what favor was, and believed that God could take just a little bit as they were good stewards and make them ruler over many. That God cannot wait to get up inside of impossible situations if we can simply believe. But that's really not what I'm talking about. Verse 20, let's look at it together. Verse 20, which he wrought in Christ when he raised him from the dead and set him at his own hand in heavenly places. He was talking about the power of God. He was saying, if you really want to know how great my power is, he said, I took Christ who was dead and I raised him from the dead, and then I set him at my own right hand in heavenly places. And if we read verse 21, it's going to begin to tell us things like about his name, far above all principalities and power and might and dominion, over every name that is named, not only in this this world, but also and the one that